Warning, this video and all other videos on this channel are for entertainment purposes only. The content of this video and all other videos on this channel are the opinions of the creator only and do not constitute legal, trading, investment, or financial advice of any kind. Investing carries a high level of risk and the majority of retail clients lose money. Do not invest in capital unless you understand the risks and you are prepared to lose it all. Right, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and unusually, I don't have much to say today. I'm mostly going to point at a couple of Bitcoin things. I'm going to spend a little bit of time going over the charts, and again, we'll repeat myself until we find these cycle lows. And I also want to talk a little bit about rate hikes, rate cuts, this year being wild, what we can expect, what we can't expect. So without further ado, of course, we were looking for that secret hidden alpha in the color of Jay Powell's tie yesterday, and I think he knows we know. I think he knows we know. I think he's messing with us. Of course, purple tie means we pump, blue tie means we crash. And I think he's sending a message, okay? So I'm not sure how much longer we're going to be able to continue with this hidden tie alpha. It's going to be interesting. And I will file this one under the "this year is going to be wild" section whilst the markets are scared. And I think it's fair to say there is a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt out there at the moment. The big boys are minting USDT to buy Bitcoin with. And speaking of the big boys buying Bitcoin, we can see that Bitcoin whales are now holding around 9% of the circulating supply, totaling 1.8 million Bitcoin, including the spot Bitcoin ETFs. So the big boys seem to think there's further upside in Bitcoin. And again, continuing on with this theme of the big boys, we now have 30 fund managers who have publicly declared ownership of BlackRock's spot Bitcoin ETF. Begs the question, doesn't it? Is this just getting started? Is there still a lot more room for a big upside squeeze? And all of this big boy buying is against a backdrop of the Bitcoin funding rates being negative between Saturday and into Monday. We have now flipped back to positive, and the bears couldn't get it below 60k. And the last time that Bitcoin saw negative funding rates, the price was at 15k. And of course, what happened thereafter was what most people were not ready for, nor expecting. Bitcoin, of course, went on a roughly 400% rally to the upside. I'm not saying that we're going to get 400% from here, but I still remain cautiously optimistic walking forward on Bitcoin. As I keep saying over and over again, this year is going to be wild. The only thing I'm sure of is that this year is indeed going to be wild, and it's a wild time to be alive, and we haven't actually seen anything yet. It's already been pretty wild, right? It's already been a pretty cool year. But believe me, we have seen nothing yet. And pertaining to rate hikes, rate cuts, is it possible that we see from the Fed, right, the hiking cycle, a pause, and then a resumption of hikes? Is this really on the table? Because it seems to be not entirely off the table. Now, this would be completely historic. When I was asked about the potential of seeing another hike after the pause that we've already experienced, I said that my guess would be they don't hike again. But if they did, we would just have to laugh and put it in the "this year will be wild" file. Ordinarily, I would say, no, they've never done that. They're not going to do that. But like I said, this is going to be a wild time to be alive. I expect to see records get broken in both directions. I expect to see chaos ensue, as I'm sure you're well aware by now. And if they did do something crazy like hike, pause, and then resume a hiking cycle, like I said, we would just put that in the "well, I told you this year was going to be wild" file. I kind of don't really think this is going to happen, personally. If I had to guess or bet one way or the other, I would say I don't think we see this. But one thing I keep noticing, right, is we use the CME probabilities, and they're pretty good. In case you don't know, anytime we have a bias, a probability, right, of 85% or higher in one direction, that tends to be what we see come to fruition. So long as one direction is skewed 85% or more, then we can say with pretty high confidence that that is what we're going to see. So applying this same rule, we can see that in May's meeting, okay, we are significantly above 85%, that we're going to remain paused. So I have no problem in saying that with a great deal of confidence, we will not see cuts or hikes in May. We will indeed see a pause in May's meeting. Here's where it starts to get a bit weird, right? How many times have you seen me pull this up and say, well, let's click out to June. June looks like we're probably going to be remaining paused as well. And as you can see, right, we're about just under 85% probability we're going to remain paused. So I'm pretty confident in saying we will indeed be paused in June's meeting. But notice how it starts life where I click out to July and I go, well, there's a pretty high probability that we see cuts, right? And then a couple of weeks goes past, and now we sit at July with a little over 56% probability that we are going to remain paused in July. So they continue to push this out, and this is not unique to June or July's meeting. Remember, there was a while ago it seemed like we weren't getting out of May without cuts. Then it seemed like we weren't getting out of June. Then it seemed like we weren't getting out of July without cuts. Okay, we're back to 2/3, right? 2/3 probability that we see a cut in September, 1/3 probability that we remain paused in September. But remember, just a couple of weeks ago, there was only a 6.7% chance that we were getting out of September without seeing cuts. There was only a 6.7% probability that we were going to be remaining paused at September's meeting. And now, just a few weeks later, here we sit at 30% probability that we are indeed going to be paused all the way to September. So can I entirely rule out the idea that they're going to just do something unprecedented and hike again after a pause? No, I can't rule that out. And like I said, if it occurs, then we'll just put it in the "this is wild" file. But it is definitely a pattern that I'm starting to notice that, like I said, at first it's like, well, based on the CME probabilities, we're not getting out of X month without seeing cuts. And that month, X month, just continues to get pushed further and further and further out. So to be honest, as always, it doesn't change a great deal, right? Higher for longer in terms of rates also means higher for longer in terms of risk assets. At least that's what we see. That's where the real alpha is, okay? And the main reason I track the rates is not because I actually care about the interest rates. It's not because of anything other than this piece of hidden alpha right here. You can see the stock market in orange at the bottom tends to rally during the onset of a hiking cycle and through the pause. It is after the pause and the onset of a cutting cycle begins that we see the stock market decline. It's the same here, right? The pause is fine, so is the hikes, but the onset of the cutting cycle is what tops the stock market. Here was a little bit different. We got more of a big sort of distribution expanded top, but ultimately the onset of the cutting cycle saw a major top come in for the stock market. This time was a little bit of a spurious data point for reasons I've discussed before, but ultimately we got back to ZERP in no time, and of course the market continued to do nice things thereafter. But at the hard right edge, this is what I expect to see repeat. I expect to see this pause, and like I said earlier, we can't rule out another hike. Now that would be that would be unusual, and I would suspect something breaks if that's the case. But you know, what do I know, right? What do I know? All I know is they keep pushing these out. We keep remaining paused for longer than most people realized or thought was going to happen, at least based on the CME, right? Remember, the CME can't predict it either. So they're good month to month. Like I said, when we got a skew of 85%, we can say, yep, there's the CME knows what's going to happen. They know what's coming. But they've been no good at predicting months and months out because they just keep pushing this thing back. At some point, the blue line here, okay, the Fed funds rate that is currently paused will, of course, roll over, will do what it's always done before. The onset of a cutting cycle will ensue. And based on historical data, that should tell us to expect a decline in the stock market and risk assets. So that is why I continue to monitor these interest rates. Once we start to price in 85% probability of seeing some cuts show up, okay, then I think we can start to worry about this. For now though, higher for longer in terms of interest rates also means higher for longer in terms of the stock market. That is at least my read. I expect this thing to continue higher, and I expect at some point this thing to head lower and thus see the stock market follow in quick succession. So with all that said, let's hop into some charts. We still have a relatively strong dollar, okay? A little bit of a pullback will probably get a bunch of people excited and see them start to call for this. Now, I'll believe it when I see it. That's what I want to happen, believe me, as I've been saying over and over again. But at the moment, this is undeniably a bullish breakout, leaving behind a 3-year cycle low. Until we violate this blue upwards open support line, then I can't even entertain downside targets. Personally, I had a question from one of the members to say, is this an early cycle low, slightly early cycle low here? Have we got a day 20 cycle low here? And thus, are we continuing higher for gold? And the answer is simply, I don't know, right? I actually don't know. That doesn't look a lot like a cycle low to me, to be honest. That doesn't look anything like a cycle low. I still think there is time to roll over, but I will consider, if we take out the prior high, that we have indeed left behind a day 20 cycle low. Slightly early, but it's definitely not, outside the realm of possibilities. But to me, it just doesn't look anything like we've had a decline. That wick into there, I don't know. For me personally, that's not what they usually look like. Usually we would expect to see a few more candles. I wonder if what we get here is the classic two drives pattern, okay? So here's our top, counter trend bounce, a second drive lower that undercuts that first low, and that's where the cycle low comes in. So That to me would be far more organic, far more normal and to be expected, far easier to read. As always, we have our invalidation. If we print a new high, then we can say, yeah, that was a day 20 cycle. But I would think for now, we are possibly setting up a 2 drives lower. Oh, speaking of 2 drives, actually, that reminds me, for anyone that's interested, I know I've been getting a lot of people ask me about the cycle PDF I put together. That is now available in the store. I will put a link in the pinned comment as well, and it contains absolutely everything I know about cycles, including all of these nuances like the 2 drives, like the fake out failed cycles, like cycle inversions. We'll get to Bitcoin actually. Speaking of cycle inversions, I need to remember that. But yeah, I'll put a link in the pinned comment if you want to go and get that PDF for everything I know about cycles. I literally put 100% of my cycle knowledge in one document. But going back to gold, like I say, I do think that's what we're doing, possibly a 2 drives pattern. That would be normal and to be expected. And again, if we clear above that high, then happy days, we have got a new cycle and we can start to entertain adding exposure elsewhere. Kind of the same deal for silver, right? Like, it doesn't at the moment look like it's finished finding a cycle low to me. Now, I wouldn't rule it out, but also it's pretty rare that we top and find a cycle low one day later. That is pretty rare. Usually you'd expect to see more of this occur, and then we go. Haven't looked at these miners. Okay, maybe, right? Maybe, but again, 1, 2, 3. I don't know. For me, I haven't quite seen enough price action yet. If it is, already in and we're going to see a bounce, then that's fine. There should be areas on the chart to get in on. I've had this nice shakeout. You can see I was calling for this in the members section, a pullback, and then looking to get long. So I don't think we're quite there yet. The housing data I didn't look at yesterday, but I'm guessing was bad. I'm guessing the housing data was bad. VNQ continuing down. And people were saying to me about the fractal not fitting. Well, this is from the GFC on the weekly time frame. This is from back here, 2008. And I know, it's not the same today, bro. Yeah, I know. But it's not far off either. Like, that's just the absolute reality. It's not super far off either, okay? So I'm not calling for a 2008 style plunge. I think a much more orderly walk down would probably be reasonable. So maybe it looks more like this in the real world, okay? Minus that plunge. Maybe we just get this sort of orderly walk down and decline somewhere into, I don't know, the end of next year, perhaps slightly later. But something like this would not surprise me. That is why I'm currently short. As always, it's just a trade, right? I don't care if it's right or wrong. That's what stops are for. And a bunch of trades fail, right? That's just how trading is. But for now, until this thing can break out, then I maintain my short position. I maintain pushing this trade. And if anything, it seems to be more right now than it has been any other time during this trade. So break out, of course, right? Get above here. And we can say we're not going to continue to push this trade. It's unreasonable to continue to short something that's broken out of a downward sloping red resistance line. But for now, right, it seems to me like property wants lower. And again, I know this is probably not the best proxy, but this is just my preferred proxy for the housing market. The stock market, as I was saying yesterday, right, we're looking for kind of a V and a plunge out of here. Or excuse me, a plunge and a V out of here. That's kind of what I want to see. But undeniably, we are working on, this is a candidate for a swing low. So if we can get a nice big green candle show up today, something like this, okay, and then look to break out, then we can confirm that as a cycle low and look to play this bounce. Of course, if you're a level 3 member, then look out for a video update this week regarding getting hold of some new positions. It's the same for the NASDAQ, right? Candidate for a swing here. I certainly don't want to be jumping in front of trains or trying to guess, but this looks about right. As you can see per my yellow squiggle, if we can get a nice big green candle and confirm it with a trend line break, then I think we should be about ready to go hunting higher prices. Dow Jones as well. I think Dow Jones is possibly, it's close enough to that prior all-time high that it feels like now would be a good time to backtest it. So maybe that's what's coming, okay? Just a little backtest of this green level and we'll set a new angle of attack, the second angle in red. Look to confirm it with a breakout of the downward sloping blue resistance line. And it's the same thing every 40 odd days, right? Also, I'm going to check in on oil. It's been a while, okay? Take a look at this. So is this about to be breakout, retest, resumption and massively higher oil prices? That would make perfect sense if you read the news, right? Oh, well, there's war in the Middle East, there's war here, there's drone attacks, there's blah, 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 right? There's always a million and one reasons to expect oil to move higher. And maybe it does. If indeed what we get is a breakout of this downward sloping blue resistance line, then I become super bullish oil. But for now, this looks like it's thinking about rejecting, at least in the short term. There is a daily cycle low due for oil somewhere around the 20th of May. And of course, if we were to get rejection, this is an if, I'm not saying this is a call, I'm saying if we were to get rejection into a cycle low and then it was to roll over and break that upward sloping red resistance line, then that will be exactly what I have been expecting. That is what the market is not expecting. That is what people like to criticize my opinion on, which is fine. You can criticize my opinion. You're, of course, free to disagree. But typically speaking, right, what I have, the vibe I have about oil is exactly the same as when I shorted it back here. Everyone was like, no, war in the Middle East, $150 a barrel. And that was quite a nice short. And I could see a very similar setup playing out from here. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It doesn't matter, right? No position. And in fact, if we find a daily cycle low and then break out, I'd probably be interested in getting long here. But I don't really see it that way. I think what's going to happen here is this. And the more people that write in the comments, no way, oil's going to $150 a barrel, well, that is even more similar to what was being said and what I was experiencing back here. So as ever, I don't care. It's just a trade, okay? We'll see. I don't care about being right or wrong, but if this is the setup, then expect me to short in this neighborhood. And if this is the setup, expect me to possibly entertain getting long oil for the first time in a while. And then last but not least, here's Bitcoin, okay? Now, if I move this fractal out the way, just temporarily, you can see what have we really done, okay? Still holding above our cycle low. So still not got a failed cycle. Is there a chance that we get a fake out failed cycle? Yep, that's entirely possible. Maybe we do something like this. Maybe we chop around in here as per my yellow fractal. Like I said, usually when we spend this much time moving around and chopping sideways as opposed to find a cycle low and come flying out of here, usually by the time we've got halfway through the cycle and not done much, it tells me that we're going to do another 30 odd days of chopping around before we can move higher. As always, I'm open to anything. I'm open to lower and higher numbers. But to me, it just seems like this yellow fractal is still the base case, right? Not much has changed. Seems like we've got to do a bit more chopping before we can move higher. However, perhaps if the stock market can find its cycle lows and come swinging out of those lows, maybe what we can see then is Bitcoin do a similar thing, right? Maybe we could see the stock market lead Bitcoin higher. Oh, and one more thing that I almost forgot, and I'm certainly on the lookout for. It's incredibly rare, but it can happen, and that is a cycle inversion. A cycle inversion, if you don't know, is when we force a half cycle low into a cycle low. And that only occurs when we exhaust all sell side pressure. Now, they're really rare. They are quite rare, okay? But it's certainly something I want to be on guard for. Now, I'm not saying it is likely. Like I said, they are very rare. But if we were to force this half cycle low into a cycle low, if it were to come absolutely tearing out of here, like this yellow fractal at the moment, right? If we were to do this any day now, stock market finds a low, some bullish catalyst comes, and Bitcoin breaks the downward sloping blue resistance line and starts firing off, right? You can see, I mean, this would be like 100K by June. Now, that's by no means a price prediction or a call, but my point is, if we were to come swinging out of here, then that would be a cycle inversion. Like I said, that would be forcing a half cycle low into a cycle low, and that happens when we completely run out of sellers. When all the sellers are gone and there's only buyers left, we can force a half cycle low into a cycle low and come swinging out of here. Now, they are incredibly rare, so that is by no means a call or an expectation, but it is something I have to be on guard for, at least for a few days. If we continue to chop like this sideways fractal suggests, right, then, you know, we'll invalidate this within a few days. But in the rare and extreme case that we do just come absolutely tearing out of here, then I want to be on guard for that. I want to make sure I can increase my exposure through the crypto stocks during that time. So that is just something to be aware of. I don't think it's very likely. Like I said, cycle inversions are pretty rare, but we did actually see them in the NASDAQ and the S&P back here, right? So here's a really nice example. We had a daily cycle, a half cycle low, and a cycle inversion that was forced into becoming a daily cycle low. You can see this is a very, very short cycle here. It's only a half cycle, something like 15 sessions. And that was a cycle inversion. It forced a weekly cycle low and a daily cycle low at the half cycle low point. And you can see what happened thereafter was very, very positive and encouraging things. So it's something that, like I said a million times, it's rare. But if it happens, okay, then you want to be on guard. You want to at least be aware that that can occasionally happen. And if it does and confirms with a trendline break, then it may well be higher for longer in an explosive fashion. So as you can see, not a great deal of change. Okay, still hunting for some cycle lows. I think they should be here any day now, as I've been saying consistently. Of course, if you're a level 3 member, look out for the live signal as and when I take these positions. Also, look out for a members only video. I'm probably going to post a video because it's just easier. It's easier to post a video and say, I'm going long here, here's why, rather than to try and type it all up into some little community tab thing. Like I said, if you want to grab hold of that PDF, there'll be a link in the pinned comment to this video. And other than that, I hope you're doing well in life. Until next time, take care from me. All the best. Cheers.